let's see.
Yeah, I asked her if she wanted me to go on without her today, and she said it's fine. So
Well, good.
yeah, because I know she's having her surgery in October.
Let's
So
see.
yeah,
She's having her she's not having her surgery today, is she?
no, she's taking care of her mom. Her mom fell.
Oh, oh my
Yeah,
goodness. Oh, that's crazy.
yeah,
I
her
didn't
mom
know
fell.
that.
Yeah, and let's see, what did she say? She said she fractured her pelvis and possibly her
Oh,
lower spine.
I remember her saying
So
something about
she's
that, but I didn't realize.
yeah, so she all night.
Okay, well, glad you're here. Let's get this set up on our screen share.
Yeah, it'll be just you and me, and I'm glad you're feeling a lot better. So
So much better. I'm so much better. So I'm not sure. I'm looking for the bookmark.
we
Um,
were on page 19. No, we were on, I'm sorry, page 33, and it's a new section. It says number 2, sweet are the uses of adversity.
all right, so we're there. And there's
Yeah.
the bookmark. So I'm
So I'll
smarter
go
than I thought.
I'll start us off with the prayer, and you know, this beautiful prayer that Iris does and Karen and I usually do. I was listening to Carol Howell, and she said that actually that prayer came from William Thetford, and that it was the only part of the Course in Miracles had that came from his mind.
It actually came for him.
Oh,
That's the because he was having difficulty. He was supposed to be giving a class or a lecture or something, and he was really nervous about it. And so that prayer came for him. It did come obviously through Jesus, and I believe that Helen scribed it. These were directions that were given directly to Bill. Uh,
ah,
from there's a lot in the course where actually Helen just spoke it out, and it was not written down in any notes or anything. She just spoke. She had conversations. Jesus and Helen and Jesus telling Helen and Bill both things and telling them through Helen speaking, and he would say, Helen, you are supposed to do this. Bill, this is for you. And Helen was just saying these things, and Bill was typing them as she was saying them. And I believe that that's one of those that came through that particular uh, means. So yeah, that prayer is specifically they call it the teacher's prayer, and it's one that if you ever go to any of the meetings of the Foundation for Inner Peace, most Course in Miracles meetings actually start with that prayer because it's the one that's given to us to basically um, uh, be open for listening for the Holy Spirit. So yeah, but it was specifically given to Bill from uh, from Jesus, but it was through Helen, yes.
wow, it's such a beautiful prayer. So I'll start us off with it. But it really puts you into another space, and you're really inviting the Holy Spirit in to represent, him who sent you. So it's so beautiful. I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do because he who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever he wishes, knowing he goes there with me. I will be healed as I let him teach me to heal. And now we'll start on The Healing Power of Kindness, Volume 2, forgiving our limitations, and sweet are the uses of adversity. And I'm sorry Karen's not here, but she needs, everything's perfect and she needs to be with her mom right now. So include her mom in our prayers. So, okay. Sweet are the uses of adversity. Our teacher Jesus helps us by shifting our perception of the body's limitations and the world in which the body lives from prison to classroom. Some lovely verses in Shakespeare's early comedy, As You Like It, are the inspiration for this chapter. The context of these verses, one phrase of which gives this chapter its title, is the reaction of the Duke to his banishment to the forest, having had his realm usurped by his unscrupulous younger brother. Not succumbing to discouragement or despair, the Duke finds that exile is not so bad after all. For one thing, he does not have to deal with the burdens of being in court, the Duke says. Sweet are the uses of adversity, and this our life, exempt from public haunt, finds tongues in trees, books in the running brooks, sermons in stones, and good in everything. I would not change it. One of his lords responds, Happy is your grace that can translate the stubbornness of fortune into so quiet and so sweet a style. These kind and healing sentiments find a parallel in a passage near the end of the text where Jesus tells us, trials are but lessons that you failed to learn, presented once again. So where you made a faulty choice before, you now can make a better one, and thus escape all pain that what you chose before has brought to you. What is noteworthy about this little speech is that Shakespeare does not say, how sweet is adversity, but how sweet are the uses of adversity. The same with A Course in Miracles. Nowhere does Jesus say the world is a good thing or sweet. In fact, he pointedly says the opposite as he paints for us a rather bleak picture of our home, never seeking to sugarcoat or paint a pretty face on it. He simply exposes to us what the world is like, being an attack on God. However, although it is a place of hell, suffering, and death, because it comes from a thought of hell, suffering, and death, the world can still serve a sweet use, a different purpose, translated from the prison that the ego uses to enslave us into a classroom in which Jesus teaches us his happy lessons of forgiveness. Those lessons then would be sweet, and so the Duke's Lord comments about his master is happy because he can translate the stubbornness of fortune into so quiet and so sweet a style. The point here is that when we live according to our right minds, with Jesus or the Holy Spirit as our teacher, we live by the principle of acceptance, accepting the world as it is and our lives of limitation without trying to change them. This is an important step that cannot be skipped without negative consequences for our spiritual progress. In the text, Jesus states that the ego analyzes, the Holy Spirit accepts. The ego made a brain that seemingly governs the body because the brain is the instrument of analysis. It is what we believe thinks, reasons, and understands. Taking the sensory data that the ego programmed our sensory organs to bring back and synthesizes them to produce a conclusion that we think makes sense and, most insanely, that we act upon. Is in essence, we take illusionary information to which we give an illusionary explanation and then believe this to be reality, which then becomes the basis of our response and reaction. The Holy Spirit, on the other hand, does not analyze. He simply accepts what is true. This translates in our personal experience to accepting what alone is true in the world of illusion. Nothing here has the power to bring us pleasure or pain, happiness or grief. In the process of reaching that level, however, we need be sure that we not avoid recognizing that the world is indeed a horrid place where we live out the horrid intention in our minds of limiting love to our specifications of specialness. The world's only value, a huge value to be sure, is that it displays for us what is in our minds. What needs correction and healing is the mind's mistaken decision to identify with the ego instead of the Holy Spirit, and our guilt and fear stem from that mistaken choice. Looking at the mindless world through Jesus's eyes shows us this mistake so we can mindfully choose again. This corrected vision reflects the important course principle: projection makes perception. Without question, projection is the most important concept to understand in order to apply the teachings of A Course in Miracles. The texts in general and the early workbook lessons specifically are about projection. The ego's belief that ideas leave their source. The Holy Spirit's correction that ideas leave not their source undoes this ego dynamic by showing that what we perceive outside comes from what is inside. This inside is not an amorphous, amorphous, how do you say that, Lynn? Amorphous? I guess amorphous psyche or brain,
Yeah,
but
amorphous.
the
I could
mind.
mute myself. Amorphous, yeah.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Recall that what gives me access to my mind is paying attention to what goes on in my bodily life. What I feel about a news program, situation, or person, my projected imperfections and limitations. If I am not at peace, I have chosen the ego. A Course in Miracles helps me realize not only that I have done that, but why I have done so. I do not want to be at peace because without conflict, I will cease to be the unfairly treated self I see as my identity. So, is there anything that you or anyone else would like to make a comment about?
Well, yeah, Ken is really explaining to us why we see the world the way that we see it and why we experience the world as we experience it, because we are seeing it as an attack on God. We're seeing every moment as being an attack in some way, and we see ourselves as being attacked. I'm attacked by my body. I'm attacked by the weather. I'm attacked by politicians. I'm attacked by my diet. I'm attacked by uh, allergies. I'm just being attacked all the time. I'm attacked because I'm tired and I want to rest. And then I'm attacked because I have to get up. I'm just feeling like, none of these things are happening because I'm really joyful about being here in this world. And the course does, pretty much paint a bleak picture, but it also paints another picture that says that there is a real world that's beyond this world of attack where we think we're experiencing so much upset, and we're being forced into uh, living with, protecting, serving, saving, feeding, a body. There's just so much, geez, even I have to go to work so I can make money so that I can feed my body, or have a house to live in, or I have to do a lot of stuff that I really don't want to do. This is a whole feeling of attack that we experience because of what we think we are. And we think somehow that it's God's will that happens that way. When in reality, uh, these are just choices that we're making because we don't want to see the perfection that is really here. And the perfection that is really here is the uh, the real world, the reality. So, that's why, I have to decide that I really want to be at peace, because as it says in text chapter 5, section 7, the decision for God, it says, I think I must have decided wrongly because I'm not at peace. I feel this way because I have reacted with a lack of love to one of God's creations. So it's not that there's something bad here. It's because we're not reacting with love to what we experience. And so, the kindness that we're talking about, that Ken is talking about, is what shifts our situation so that we're no longer experiencing a world of pain and suffering. We begin to experience a world of peace, more like the real world, when we decide to act and react with love instead of uh, this attack and fear of attack.
Right. I really like that what you said. And I mean, it's an outside picture of an inward condition. And I really like where Ken says in the book, projection makes perception. And he said that, you know, it's projection is the most important concept to understand in order to apply the teachings of A Course in Miracles. So to bring it into application, you have to understand projection really and apply it in your life. So that's what you were just talking about, was actually applying it, the talking about the attack, because it's an outside picture of an inward condition. And that's exactly what the ego did in when the separation, came into being. So I love his little books that Gloria, you know, encouraged him to write, because it really breaks things down, like you were just saying. And it's one of the most important concepts. Projection makes perception. And then last week, how we were talking about forgiveness is, looking at things differently. So it's having a different perception. That's forgiveness. So it's kind of each time we read this with Ken, it's so beautiful how he brings us in. And I really like where he brought Shakespeare in again, As You Like It. And I have the complete works of William Shakespeare, so I'm going to definitely read that chapter. But here he had an unscrupulous brother, a younger brother, that took everything away from him, and he still was able to remain at peace, and he looked at the brook as, as books, as that he's reading from the brook. I mean, how he reflects into nature. And my former older teacher used to say that the beauty that you see in nature, that helps to bring you to your right, your right mind. It's, so
Yeah. And you begin to see that beauty is everywhere. And that's all really what God, we talk about the separation. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. It's happening now, every moment that we see ourselves as being separated from the creation that's here. And so it's seeing that beauty in everything that we begin to accept the creation as it is. And you're going to see beauty in everything. Um, The other day I was outside one of my there were some young doves that they were able to fly, but they were young, and one of my cats caught one of them, and I went back out back, and it was laying there on the ground, and it was dead, and it's all of its it was like ripped open, and you could see everything, all its it was beautiful. It was like jewels. It looked like I don't know if you can understand what I'm saying. It was beautiful. And and I thought, man, this is really a morbid thing. I wanted to take a picture of it. I wish I did, because it was just so perfect and beautiful, and the colors were so vivid, and it was just I don't even know how to describe it. But, I realized that if anything you looked at in that way, you would see the beauty in it. The worms digging through the earth, the decaying mulch, everything you look at, if you look at it with the right eyes, you're going to see the beauty of it, the way that nature is, and realize that if you look at everything that way, you're going to see that God is there no matter what. So even though the world looks terrible, and oh my gosh, I was sad for the bird, I was sad for his parents, that their baby was gone, you know but that's part of it too. That's all part of it too. And you can't uh, you can't separate the creator from the creation.
Right. Yeah. And I mean the script is written, and it's to shift your perception, as you were saying, to look at it differently. So yeah, and that Duke definitely did that even with his younger brother. That's a lot of forgiveness there. So but I love how Ken brings that in, and in the book, along with the course, and it's beautiful. So that thank you, Lynn.
Yeah, thank you, Mickey.
Okay.
So do you want me to read?
If you feel up to it, sure.
Sure. Okay, so the world then becomes a classroom with significant meaning for us, but not because of its inherent value. It has none. It is important to accept the world limitations, collective and personal, because that is our only entree to accepting what we've chosen in our minds. We accept, quote, the stubbornness of our fortune, unquote, as Shakespeare's Duke did, but now with a purpose that is quiet and sweet, because forgiveness is quiet and sweet. The adversity we associate with our limitations is chosen as a defense against the peace filled happiness of being a child of God. Sweet indeed are the uses of adversity when we look at the limitations we chose and now choose again. Not, not by changing the body or the external situation, but by changing the purpose of the body and the situation. Oh, here, I've got to switch the microphone over here and out talk while I'm reading. Okay. Okay. Uh, Rather than being a defense, they become the means of our returning to the mind, that we may choose again. In Shakespeare's play, the Duke, as would any good Stoic, accepted his fate. He did not launch a counter invasion against his younger brother. In the play, everything ends up fine. Yet, regardless of a situation's outcome, we can be at peace. If we were in the Duke's place, perhaps we would be guided to conquer the land that had been seized from us. But if we followed that course of action, we would do so with no investment in the outcome and without hatred or a desire for vengeance. I mentioned above the parallel to the Duke's speech at the end of the text. Here is the next line in that passage. Okay, and this is from the text. In every difficulty, all distress, and each perplexity, Christ calls to you and gently says, my brother, choose again.
Mhm.
That is from text 31, chapter 31, section 8, paragraph um, 3, sentence 2. Jesus is not denying that we would experience difficulty, distress, or perplexity. That is why, to say it again, it is psychologically disastrous, not to mention deleterious to our spiritual growth, to deny negative experiences. Rather than feel guilty or angry or depressed about a problem, physical or psychological, we need to accept it as a classroom, telling ourselves this is the form in which we will learn what we need to learn. Whatever the distress, it is our choosing. This is not because we are not neurotic, psychotic, or bad, but because we want to prove we are who we are not, that the separated, sinful, and guilty self is real, and our glorious self an illusion. Whatever its form, we are simply using the distress to prove the reality of the separation. Anything we feel robs us of peace. Our imperfections or those of others, circumstances beyond our control, can now serve a different purpose we should welcome. Rather than fight against the symptom, problem, or situation, we need embrace it, not because it has value in and of itself, but because of the purpose it will now serve. That very defect, imperfection, or adverse situation is the classroom Jesus can use to teach this is all in the mind. Not only that, it is in the mind because we want it to be there. If we agonize about something, repress it, drown it out, argue with it, or feel guilty over it, we deprive Jesus of the classroom he needs in order to teach us. After all, a teacher cannot teach without a classroom or curriculum. Thus, our limitations, symptoms, and problems are the curricula for Jesus's classroom, and our teacher wants us to welcome them in a spirit of acceptance rather than agonizing over them. To repeat this central lesson, if we despair over our limitations, we deny Jesus his only means of helping us. Wow, we would do that only because we do not want his help and do not want to learn from him. Why else would we deny him the classroom? Everything is purposive, even if it does not appear to be so. Becoming upset is thus a way of pushing Jesus away, uninviting him, as it were. So, really, what Ken is saying here that, whenever we resist what appears to be happening to us in the world, we try to fix it or change it or undo it or whatever. When we resist it, we're just saying, Jesus, I don't want to learn this lesson right now. I'm not interested in seeing, why I'm thinking this way. I don't want to know, how I can make, have a better or more peaceful life. I really want the conflict. And we
Yeah.
do that when we choose the conflict. It's not like it just happens to us and we're like victims of it. We actually choose the conflict. So, he's saying, we can just allow what happens just to be what it is and learn the lesson that we're here to learn from it rather than try to rearrange it or change it or make it different. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I love where Ken says that everything, what you read, Lynn, everything is purposive, even if it does not appear to be so. And, Ken always tells us to always ask, what is the purpose for? So even if you're upset, just to step back, look at it and ask, what is the purpose? So you're being upset, anybody being upset, there's a purpose to that. And it could be just, a form of denial, of trying to bury something deeper within. And the beauty is once you ask what the purpose is and you look at it, then you can help with Jesus, to uncover that, to bring it to the surface, to look at it and let it go.
Yeah, and I think, we think we know what the purpose is. And that's how we push Jesus away. we say, oh, I know. And it's it, we were talking the other night when Rafi was on and talking about when you do the release technique that he uses, he doesn't just do it once because he knows that what bubbles up to the surface that needs to be released, um, it means that there's stuff underneath that needs to be released again, and that's why I think he like does it like 4 times at least on everything that comes up because he's not just saying, okay, I know, and I don't have to think about this again. He's actually recognizing that he does have to think about it again. He has to look at it. It didn't come up because it was just needed one time of telling it to go away. And in fact, it just when we do that, we bury it and put it back down into the shield of oblivion.
Yeah. That's so interesting that you brought up Rafi, because when I was reading this before the class yesterday, Rafi came into my mind as with his release technique on that everything is purposive, and how he does release it. And yeah, I think he does release it at least 4 times. But I was like, wow, that's kind of his Rafi's releasing technique that he uses right here in this chapter. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome.
It is awesome. It's really awesome.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness. All right, so do you want to read on?
sure.
Okay.
Okay. We therefore need to welcome him into the classrooms of our lives so he can help us realize where the upset is truly coming from. If we make a big deal about what we see as a neurotic symptom or limitation, we fragment our lives. Being in the world is the neurotic symptom, while being in a body is the inherent limitation of ourself. Why should we select certain limitations to agonize over when our entire existence is a limitation? For example, our eyesight is a limitation because our eyes were made not to see. One could not ask for a better example of a limitation. Real seeing, Christ's vision, occurs in the mind when we join with the Holy Spirit. Yet, we made eyes that are severely limited because they cannot see. Indeed, Jesus refers to our sightless eyes in the text. Our eyes, too, are a limitation, for the only meaningful hearing is listening to the Holy Spirit's voice as the correction for having listened to the voice of the ego. Instead of hearing truly, we make ears and then believe we hear sounds which are not really there. Moreover, we make a fuss over someone born with a limited brain that thinks with an IQ of 70 instead of 120, as if that were really different from being born with eyes. One might object that everyone has eyes, but some eyes are better than others, and some ears hear better than others. Animals see, hear, and smell differently from us, yet they too are seeing things, hearing sounds, and smelling odors that are not there. Remember, the body itself is a limitation. An arm weakened by a disease or a brain limited by a chromosomal defect are no different from being born with a healthy body. Recall Jesus's statement in the text that the body is a limit on love, made to limit the unlimited. His lesson to us is that regardless of the limitation, we can learn to see and think, but not with our eyes and brain. It is helpful to recognize that we have an investment in focusing on specific symptoms, because as long as we do, agonizing and despairingly, we but do what the ego wants, protecting ourselves from Jesus's teaching. We compound this arrogance by then asking him to help us when we are really pushing him away. The help we beseech him for at that point is magic, not a miracle, for the latter changes the mind, while the former changes the body's symptoms. Jesus is a teacher of miracles, not a magician. Watch, therefore, how you focus on specific problems, limitations, and symptoms, whether in yourself or others. Anything that fragments is of the ego, for its thought system is rooted in fragmentation, as Jesus describes in The Substitute Reality in the text, chapter 18. Would you like to comment on any of this, Lynn?
Yeah, wow. And Ken is so clear, and Jesus is so clear, and of course too. And it's just really crazy. And Ken does say that. When you read, Jesus says, your eyes don't see and your ears don't hear, and your brain doesn't think. What do? You just keep going on, or do you do you just ask the question? What is it that I'm seeing, hearing, and thinking? Because our eyes are specifically made not to see. They're specifically made to see a certain spectrum, a certain frequency, and that's it. They're not going to see beyond that. So I can't see through walls. I can't see, you in Arizona, just look over there and see. My eyes are very limited. My whole body is very limited. So to think that it has anything to teach me about reality is just bizarre. But of course, we don't see it that way because it's the only thing that we know, and of course we made it, so we must think it's pretty darn good. But
Yeah, well, you have some real eye issues, and then as this body was made to age, I mean, you know, the elderly have a lot of night vision issues. They don't see as well, uh, at night. So I don't know if you want to discuss anything about your eyesight because
oh, yeah, no, I can't drive at all, but that's because I only have one eye. But that's what I began to realize because I didn't lose my vision until after I had been a student of A Course in Miracles. So, I kept looking at what the course says about the eyes and realizing that the possibility that there was going to be a miracle and my vision would be restored was not necessary or likely because it isn't really vision at all. So, that's what I began to look for. Show me what really is, show me true vision. I want to see what's really happening. And in reality, nothing is happening here at all. These are all just vibrations and you could look, any physicist will tell you that. What we're seeing here is not really here at all. It's this is this is all imaginary, but we think that it's real, and we think that that's what's really going on, and it's not at all. So, I've had a lot of contemplation about, the body itself. In fact, that's the main work I'm doing now with Jesus. Absolutely taking him with me. I love, that Ken, then, reminds us that, we're not doing this alone. We're doing this with a teacher who has already learned all the lessons. So just asking Jesus to show me what really is happening. What are these things really for? And I don't feel limited in any way at all by my physical body, my lack of vision, that the fact that I can't hear people whispering in another room, or that I, can't see you in Arizona by looking out my window. I don't I'm not bothered by that because I understand the body was made to be a limitation. It was made to keep me from seeing the truth. And so Um, I love that we can use the body then to actually show us the truth. And that's what it's for. It's not here to trip us up. It's here to show us reality.
Right. And have you found, because you're blind in one eye, have you found on the level of the body, the level of the form, that your other sensory apparatus have become more sensitive to through adaptation at all?
To some extent, I think, but I also just think it's noticing, what I didn't notice before. So, because it's not just my vision. I've lost all kind of stuff. My entire vestibular system was destroyed by an antibiotic. I don't have any kind of sense of balance at all. In fact, I have no sense of where I am in space. If you turned off the lights, if I couldn't just feel my feet on the floor, I would not know if I was floating upside down or anything. I have no sense whatsoever of my body in space. And that is really a bizarre thing as well. But most people who have this disability, they call it, become handicapped and they're not able to do anything. They're terrified to go out of their house or, because it actually does, it changes your perception of everything. I mean, you have no idea what that vestibular system does, unless you're, into um, uh, that type of science. The vestibular system is really essential to moving about in a body. Even the way you see things, it affects your vision. And uh, so that's gone. I don't have that. No, every time I lose something, it's like it doesn't stop me. It doesn't do anything to change what I'm experiencing because I experience everything perfectly. Just I don't even know how to describe it. I don't feel any loss at all of any of it. So I don't, if I lost my hearing, in fact, that's one thing. They ask you, like, people, oh, if you had to lose one sense, which would it be? And most people say, I wouldn't want to go blind. I would, blind doesn't bother me at all. If I lost my hearing, that would upset me, I think, because my hearing is like really acute, and really essential, and it always has been. I've always had what I call it supersonic hearing. I could hear people whispering in another room. I could hear what people were thinking, um, like a voice speaking to me. So um, that's like clairaudience, but it it's not a physical thing at all. It's just a hearing that occurs, and that's basically how I get along.
Yeah. Well, what wasn't it? Was it Beethoven or Mozart? One of them became deaf, right?
Beethoven.
Beethoven, right? And then he's still, so he must have just that music, played within him, and his, through his fingers, he must have just felt while he was playing the piano that it was so there. I mean, he lost his hearing. It's
Oh
amazing.
yeah. I mean, you can't really lose something like that if it's inherent in your being, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. It's amazing. Yeah.
It is amazing. I'm grateful for that for sure. So let's see, where are we at?
And in speaking of difficulty,
Do you want me to read? I will.
sure,
Okay.
sure, if you'd like to.
Okay. In speaking of difficulty, distress, and perplexity, Jesus indicates to us that he knows our lives are not particularly easy. He helps us to know, in the midst of our dis-ease, that we can look at everything differently. To return to the Duke's speech, sweet are the uses of adversity. Jesus would not change the adversity, but rather help us change the use we make of it. When Jesus says, my brother, choose again, he is not telling us to choose a different form. He's advising us to choose a different way of looking at the form. Remember, if you focus on changing the external, you have made it real. which means you have again walked into the ego's trap. The ego wants to make the world and the body's problems real because that keeps us mindless, protecting the ego from the mind's power to choose. In this regard, it is important not to lose sight of the fact that the ego is us, the part of the mind that likes being separated, special, and unique. This part fears the mind's decision maker, the one thing in the universe with the power to undo the ego. Thus, choosing again means the mind choosing a different teacher who reassuringly tells us the images you make cannot prevail against what God Himself would have you be. That's in text 31, section 8. Yeah, so whatever it is that we made up, we cannot change what God made. Exactly. If God or Jesus were to be involved with helping you with problems, that would make them real, in which means you would not be as God created you. Consider that if God created you as Christ, who has no problems, to insist that Jesus help you with your problems is to demand he share your shabby self-image, seeing you the way you see you, a vulnerable, beset with problems, and not as the self that God created. This right here is really, really important. I think, what Ken is pointing out to us is that, we pretend like, oh, I'm just so weak and small. And, Jesus has no use for that weak, small person because it's not what we are. And he doesn't even see us as being weak and small. He does, he calls us little children. Children are not uh, less than their parents. Their children are not less human beings. Children are just smaller and less knowledgeable and less skilled. They don't know as much, but that doesn't make them not equal to their parents. All humans are equal. All of God's children are equal. So just because we think we're small and weak doesn't mean that we are. And Jesus doesn't see us that way. That's why he says to us, if you want to be like me, I will help you. If you don't want to be like me, I will wait until you do. I'm still going to help you because you
Yeah,
are like me. And so, he's not seeing us as being vulnerable.
right.
He sees us as we are. Um, so Ken continues, be grateful then that he does nothing in the world, because if he did, he would not be the sublime symbol of God's love, for he would have seen you as a problem-laden ego. Yet again, that is how you insist Jesus see you every time you ask for specific help, and why he told Helen not to ask him to help her take away her fear. That would have been the worst thing she could have done, for it would have gone against the Course's purpose of returning to us the power of the mind to choose. Jesus thus says to us all, you choose to see yourselves as having problems, and I can help you look at these, but cannot help you with what you perceive to be true. The fact is that you do not have problems, except in thinking that you do. That is how Jesus teaches us that nothing has the power to separate us from the love of God in our minds. For despite our limitations and imperfections projected onto the body, we remain the one Son that God created, one with Him. Forgiving limitations in ourselves or in others clears away the interference to remembering our oneness with each other, with ourselves, and with our Creator. Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
so beautiful. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? How do we do that?
How do we do that?
Yeah.
Well, just realize that you forgiveness is one. You have to perceive it differently, and also you have to, see the perfection, the Christ in your brother. So
Yeah. And that's what Jesus said, he was a man who saw the face of Christ in everyone he saw, and so he remembered God. So he was just like us, and seeing imperfection everywhere he looked. But at some point, he decided that he wanted to see something else. And that thing that he decided he wanted to see was the Christ. Seeing the Christ was what reminded him of the truth of what he was, and that's how he remembered God.
Yeah.
So that this is what we do in this world is we indulge ourselves in we wallow in accusation, and we look around and wow, look what an idiot that guy is, and how bad these people are, and what terrible things they're going to do to me, or what terrible things they're doing to each other. We're really looking for God's creation to be the broken world that we expect to see. And then we wonder why can't something change here? Well, the only thing that can happen is that we can learn to see it differently, because the way we're seeing it now is faulty. And that's all Ken was just saying, that's all Jesus is saying to us is choose again.
Right. Yeah. It's too it goes in line with what the lesson for today, lesson 263, is my holy vision sees all things as pure. So this little book and this chapter that we're reading goes in line with lesson 263.
Yeah, let me get up to that and let's take,
Okay.
because yesterday's lesson was like that too.
Yeah.
And yesterday's lesson was a real humdinger, which
Um,
was let me perceive no differences today. Basically saying, how could I see 1,000 forms in what remains as one? And why should I give this 1,000 names when only one suffices? For your son must bear your name, for you created him. Let me not see him as a stranger to his father, nor a stranger to myself, for he is a part of me and I of him. And we are part of you who are our source, eternally united in your love, eternally the Holy Son of God. So this idea that there's only one son and we are it is the thing that leads us into just seeing the oneness of what we are.
yeah.
Uh, so what's today's lesson?
My
Uh,
holy vision, yeah, sees all things as pure. And this reminds me too with Tara Singh, he used to always emphasize a lot at his retreats that he would have in his workshops is to see uh, the Holy Christ in your brother, and he would say sometimes even when you're praying to, can you see that person, it's Christ, and then you would name the name of your brother, because you're seeing the Christ. So he was coming more from a Sikh type perspective because that was his background, but it was he was saying the same thing.
exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. So you want to read the lesson?
sure. My holy vision sees all things as pure. And then this is the prayer. Father, your mind created all that is. Your spirit entered into it. Your love gave life to it. And would I look upon what you created as if it could be made sinful? I could not perceive such darkness and fearful images. A madman's dream is hardly fit to be my choice. Instead of all the loveliness with which you blessed creation, all its purity, its joy, and its eternal quiet home in you. Do you want me to go on?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
And and while we still remain outside the gate of heaven, let us look on all we see through holy vision and the eyes of Christ. That's where, you know, I love that, through the eyes of Christ. Let all appearances seem pure to us, that we may pass them by in innocence and walk together to our Father's house as brothers and the holy sons of God. I just love that because it shows a picture of you walking hand in hand with your brothers to your Father's house.
Yeah, and this is all brothers, all brothers. That's I think where we as course students sometimes get caught up in looking around and saying, well, this guy is a bad politician. I wish this person here would run for president. I don't like the way my neighbor cuts their lawn. We're just looking for the differences and not using our holy vision, which sees all things as pure. Because if our holy vision saw all things as pure, we would see that no matter what the circumstance seems to be happening, it is just a madman's dream
Right,
and not really happening at all. But while we still remain outside the gate of heaven, which is where we think we are, let us look on all we see through holy vision and the eyes of Christ. And this is just what Ken was talking about, the seeing
right.
the holy vision.
Yeah, and it's this ties in too with your earlier class today with Sharon and how she was talking about that, and it's it reminds me of that lesson too. I trust my brothers who are one with me. So of course Ken says, he said that you don't trust your brother's ego, but I trust my brothers who are one with me, and that would be the Christ. So to me it doesn't really matter who's going to be in office, because I trust the Christ part of my brother who is one with me, that Christ part. And each fragment has that Christ part, because it's kind of like where Gloria, Ken's wife, said it's a big, like a big piece of glass, and you drop the glass and it breaks, it splatters into tiny little fragments, but each one of those fragments is still the one coming from the one, which is the Christ mind. So that's who I trust, and I trust the Christ and the Christ mind.
That's it, exactly. And of course, that lesson 181 is my favorite lesson, or it's my mantra lesson, I guess. It's the lesson that, I was given to learn because I did have so much fear and distrust, and it was given to me for a specific person. And once I learned it with that person, I began to see that it was the same with everyone, and it didn't matter. I fell down a little bit. I got into some fear. As Sharon was talking, the last election through threw me into kind of a tizzy because I was afraid of things in the world. I thought something bad was going to happen. But, the reality is nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal exists. That is the peace of God. And that's all we have to do is recognize that, that we're looking for the peace of God. And that's the only thing that makes that has any meaning at all. So our time is up. I'm looking next week. You can start One Brother is All Brothers, which is exactly what we're talking about.
It's exactly what we're talking about. Yeah. And I'd like to end it with a little poem from Dr. Shookman. So, but yeah, that's beautiful. And next week's class looks really great. And it's so this little book ties in so much with the lessons too of the day.
It's amazing.
It
It's
is
like
a
it was made up that way for some reason that, oh my gosh.
yeah, it's beautiful. Okay, so I'm gonna read a Jesus prayer, and it's from Dr. Shookman, The Gifts of God. A child, a man, and then a spirit. Come in all your loveliness. Unless you shine upon my life, it is a loss to you. And what is lost to you is also mine. I cannot calculate why I am here, except for this. I know that I have come to seek you here and find you. In your life, you show the way to my eternal home. A child, a man, and then a spirit. So I follow in the way you show to me, that I may come at last to be like you. What but your likeness would I want to be? There, there is a silence where you speak to me and give me words of love to say for you to those you send to me. And I am blessed because in them I see your shining through. There is no gratitude that I can give for such a gift. The light around your head must speak for me, for I am dumb besides your gentle hand with which my soul's led. I take your gift in holy hands, for you have blessed them with your own. Come, brothers, see how like to Christ am I, and I to you, whom he has blessed and holds as one with me. A perfect picture of what I can be, you show to me, that I might help renew your brother's failing sight. As they look up, let them not look on me, but only you. The Gifts of God, page 82 and 83, Dr. Helen Shipman. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful poem. Oh my gosh. I love that one so much. All right, Mickey, thank you so much, sweetie. I'm glad you're here.
Thank
And
you. Thanks for having
forward
me.
to seeing you again, maybe tonight. We'll see. But I'm just grateful that we're here together.
Yeah,
So thanks
thank you.
again.
And we'll really put Karen's mom into prayer. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And know that she's exactly where she needs to be, doing exactly what she needs to do.
yeah.
And it's all for us. So
Okay.
thank you, thank you, thank you. Love you, friend.
Love you too. Have a great afternoon. Hopefully see you later. Okay.
All right.